Hey, Microsoft fans and enthusiasts, welcome back for another special edition of Microsoft Today podcast. Today, we have Thomas Maurer from Switzerland, a Microsoft MVP and Azure specialist. We are going to interview him and talk about things like education, certifications, Azure, Microsoft's corporate evolution, interacting with Microsoft employees on Twitter, being proactive, and much, much more right after a word from our sponsors. Before we get started with Thomas, I just wanted to interject real quick and let you know what went down. So basically, I met Thomas on Twitter the other day. I saw that he was taking a Microsoft Azure exam. I was just browsing, I think, Azure hashtags or something along those lines, and I came across his exam and I wished him good luck. And once he passed, he let me know, and we kind of hit it off from there. And then, so that gets us the interview we have today. And a final piece of housekeeping before we get started. I just want to let you guys know that the podcast is still being added. We have 12 total services we're trying to put the podcast on, including iTunes and TuneIn Radio and some other places it's not right now. But we do have an RSS feed, and if you go to our Twitter page, MSFT Today on Twitter, we link all the current places we have it available. But with the RSS feed, it's basically what we feed into iTunes. And so you can map that directly to your iTunes player. You can map it directly to whatever player you use that it's currently not on. Finally, I want to thank everybody who supported the podcast so far. I've had overwhelming support. The MSFT Today Twitter's blown up. My personal Twitter's blown up. People are very excited about what we're doing here, about how we're talking more about education, more empowering, a little bit different podcasts, like we said in our first podcast. I want to let you know that Patreon is available, so patreon.com/MSFT Today. If you subscribe to Patreon, you get a commercial-free podcast that goes up as soon as we post it elsewhere, so that's an option for you, plus a whole bunch of other perks, so check that out if you'd like to. But anyways, thank you so much to everybody for your support. Hopefully we have many, many, many more interviews like this coming up, and I think you guys are going to love this, because Thomas is a fantastic human being, a fantastic technologist, and I can't wait to talk to him again, and I can't wait to see what you guys say. This was a fantastic interview because two technology guys from across the world from each other. I'm from Texas, good old down home. We got Cowboys, Texas. I don't have a cowboy hat or have boots or anything like that, and he's from Switzerland. Like, it's pretty opposite sides of the world, and we have very similar interests and very similar visions of what Microsoft and technology are doing. And I have no doubt many of you out there feel kind of the same way. So I think that's awesome, because hopefully you guys can relate, and then hopefully you guys can learn and take some experiences or some guidance or information that I shared in this, and go from there. That's the goal of this. We want to enable other people to succeed, and we also want to learn from each other. I learned from him tonight. I'm going to involved in a couple things I'm not involved in, like public speaking. So you'll listen to that in the podcast now. But thanks again to Thomas. Thanks again to all the early subscribers. I challenge all of you, just please tell one person about this who you think might like it before next episode. Thanks, and have a great one.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Welcome back to another episode of MSF Today. I'm Brad Grew, and I'm joined today by a special guest, Thomas Maurer from Switzerland, all the way from Switzerland, a Microsoft MVP and Azure Cloud Specialist. I reached out to Thomas on Twitter, and we kind of just hooked up. He was going through some certifications, an Azure certification this week, and he passed. Congratulations, Thomas. So I thought it'd be great to kind of talk to him about that, and then also he is a Microsoft MVP. So I know the MVP award for Microsoft fans is kind of like, we don't really know how it happens, but we know that there's a lot of them, and that they're really great people, and they help the community. So we can kind of talk about that, and then just kind of get looking at his background. I think it'll be kind of cool just for everybody to hear and talk about, and then kind of how Microsoft is from the European perspective as well. So welcome, Thomas. You just want to take a couple minutes and just let everybody know about yourself and why you love Microsoft, and we can kind of go from there.
Hey, welcome, Brad. Thank you very much. I mean, first of all, thank you for having me on this podcast.
My pleasure.
It's very nice. It's very early and very late for you. Very early for me and very late for you.
Yes.
Again, I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I'm a lead cloud architect at a company called ITnetics. We are a consulting and engineering company in Switzerland. We are focusing especially on Microsoft cloud technology.
Okay.
And my part in the last couple of years obviously was Azure and Azure Stack. I started very early on with a lot of Hyper-V and Windows Server, and I still do that. But right now my focus really is on the Azure side of things. I also run a blog on thomasmaurer.ch, where I blog regularly about the things which are interesting to me. So they can be Azure things, but it can also be something when I buy a new pair of Surface headphones.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I do the same thing. So
Exactly, exactly. And yeah, for a couple of years now, I'm a Microsoft MVP. First of all, it started, I think, with Virtual Machine, which was as it was called back then. Now it's called Hyper-V, and then it moved on to Cloud and Datacenter Management. And recently, I got the Windows Insider MVP award, which is especially focused on Windows 10 consumer and devices.
that's awesome. And for those that don't know, the Insider program is basically early beta testers within the Microsoft fandom. You can go sign up to be a Windows Insider, and you can turn on the switch within your Windows 10 PC and get fast ring. I think they're fast ring and slow ring, and just know that in a fast ring, sometimes patches do crash your computer, so make sure you're always backed up to OneDrive. And but you do get the cutting edge of the updates, and the Insider folks on Twitter from Microsoft are really great, and they're really engaged with the Insider program is awesome. I didn't realize that they gave out MVPs for that, so that's pretty awesome. We met on Twitter a couple days ago because I saw it just came up within my feed. I was searching some hashtag feeds for Microsoft, and I saw that you were going to take an Azure certification. So you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I used the time I had after New Year's Eve a little bit for a new Azure exam. Microsoft just released AC 900, Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, which is, like, as the name says, a fundamental exam for Azure. And yeah, since it's an overview exam and a getting started exam more or less, I was thinking, yeah, okay, I probably don't need to prepare for months for that. Let's just see how it goes. And it went quite well. So I passed the exam, and it's a very good exam. I just realized that it's not just I was a little bit worried that it's a marketing and sales exam, but it has some technical aspects. So it's really for people who basically tried out Azure and understand what cloud computing is and things like that. So it was really interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll have to check that one out. I consider myself an evangelist as much as I do a technologist. So I love I love those types of exams just as much as I like, the actual getting the nitty gritty of getting into the technical bits of it. So that's cool that it's more a marketing type exam.
Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, it's exactly for. It's hard to tell, to be honest. I have for who it actually is. I mean, it's really, well, it's for people who start with Azure. That's obvious, but it's really a mix. And I mean, to be honest, good salespeople, they also understand the technical side or
Right.
a little bit of Azure, and they know about technology, right? They have to know, and so I think it's a good thing. It just really covers the basic. It's not gonna ask you how you do that in a command line or anything. But it really covers like the basic principles. What happens when you deploy a service? Can you make that redundant and things like that?
Awesome. Yeah. So I definitely will check that out, and I'll start sharing some more information I find with that. My website Microsoft or MSFT.today should launch this weekend, and this is where I'm going to be tracking these sort of things. Because I didn't want to start another technical blog or Microsoft news site or anything like that. I've always been kind of like the fan of showing people being an evangelist on the training, right? So been telling people for years about Microsoft Virtual Academy and Channel 9 video series, and then Microsoft's the Academy, Microsoft Professional Academy, where you can get a data science degree and machine learning and things like that. And they have the programs with edX.org, and so there's so much awesome stuff out there for free training that Microsoft does. And I just think sometimes they're really bad at telling people about it, or people just aren't aware of it. And so I think that there's a big gaping hole there of people who want to advance in their careers or advance in their personal lives, or just, I'm a guy that I just come home at night and I start watching videos and doing training courses about stuff that's not part of my career at all, and it's kind of, I just love doing it. And so I think that's pretty cool that's out there. So I imagine this wasn't your first Microsoft certification. Can you just give us a history of your certifications through your career so far?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. It's good that I yesterday also went through my transcript. I think I did my first exams back in 2010 or something like that.
Okay, well.
The funny part about it is the first exam I ever did was a SharePoint exam.
Oh, those were tough too.
Yeah, especially I remember I took the exam in German, so
Oh,
everything was translated, like even technical words like load balancer, and like in the exam I preparing everything in English, right, and all
right.
the installations we do are in English and everything, but then I decided for some reason because I didn't know better to take it in German, and turns out that load balancer is Netzwerklastenausgleich in German.
Wow.
So yeah, that was kind of fun. And then I went, obviously, back then I think it was called MCITP
Yep.
with Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2,
Yep.
which I then did for the MCT Enterprise Administrator or something like that. And then later on, when I changed it to Windows Server 2012 and 2012 R2, I think it was called MCSE Infrastructure and MCSE Private Cloud and things like that. That took then some transition exams. And obviously, also in that time frame, I started with Azure exams, like I don't know, it was 535 or something like that, and 533 and 532. So the obvious ones, which I think were just replaced, right, by
Right.
the AC exams, which now have different tracks for different people, like the Azure developer, the Azure administrator, and the Azure architect.
Well, and that brings us to a good kind of segue because I actually mentioned in my podcast I recorded yesterday, and released, I guess still today for me, but it's actually tomorrow. This is Friday, right? So the Friday the fourth now. But I discussed that back, when Azure launched, it was Windows Azure, and it's really strange to see. And if you can talk about that, maybe the difference in certifications from whenever you first took your Azure certification 5 or 6 years ago to where it is now, where it's a OS agnostic, anything goes. They really want to be the platform for everything, open source and those sorts of things. And have you seen a transition within the exams for that transition as well? Has it matched up?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. I mean, when we looked at the exams very early with Windows Azure, where it still was the ASM, like the Azure Service Management, and the old, like the classic portal, I should
Right.
not call it the old portal.
Yeah.
It really switched now, and what also not just technically. I mean, now it's really about like everything running on Azure. It's less about the Microsoft specific services running on Azure. It can be anything, and that opens also that Microsoft really starts to be or is already very active in the open source community. That is reflected in those certifications. One of the most interesting things what happened is how they do now certification. It's really a role-based certification system now, right? So what are you going to do is basically you look, what is your job role today? Are you basically a administrator? Are you a dev? Are you more of an architect? Or I mean, you can also do multiples, right? If
Right.
you're like all of that, then you can do multiples. But you can really choose what role you are, and then there is an exam for that. And then obviously you can do the next step with I think the AEC 400 exam or something like that, which is then the Azure DevOps exam. So if you are a developer and then you move a little bit further, you can also go into Azure DevOps. And I think that's very well done now. They same as the exams is also the learning platform, like Microsoft Learn, which is a new platform. I think they launched at Microsoft Ignite.
Yep.
That they're going for this role-based approach, right?
Yeah, and it's the ops model, right? So we have DevOps, and in my last position, we called infrastructure infra ops. So we would move back and forth between teams, and everything was compartmentalized. And it's just that Scrum, methodology, right? That anybody can kind of just move and ebb and flow and just get the job done. And it's kind of interesting to see that they've built that into the platform. And I just remember the first time I logged into Azure 6 or 7 years ago, and it was very, very, very basic. Now you can get lost so quickly just because there's so much stuff, and the really great thing is just seeing the adoption and the usage from companies like Bitnami or these other more open source driven companies who have completely just Ubuntu is Microsoft has their own version of that now. It's just really cool to see the paradigm shift, and just know that they're more worried about just providing the tool set for whatever job you need rather than making sure that you are using a Windows tool set. And it's just the shift over the last 5 years has just been phenomenal.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can just agree. Like looking from that from like outside Microsoft, it's but like work daily with Microsoft. It's a really cool thing to see how a company that big can transform from being company A to being basically a complete new company, right? And have a complete new strategy. And that's for me, that's really good to see.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to see that I kind of threw them under the bus in my podcast yesterday as well, that, Apple used to think different and Google used to say do no evil, and they both go against that now. And then Microsoft, the company that was the big evil empire and, had the European Union, fines, and it's just really strange that people, like, for the longest time, I'm sure you're the same way, like, you're like, oh, you're a Microsoft guy? I'm like, yeah, I'm a Microsoft guy. I love every Microsoft guy. Bill Gates is my homie. And then now people are like on the Microsoft bandwagon. It's just really, really strange. It's a very strange world we live in, not getting into all the other socio-political stuff, but like put that on top of it. It's really cool. And it's really strange. I think a lot of it, Azure is what started it, right? Guthrie and Nadella and all the masterminds, Rusinovich and those that behind the whole Azure push, basically made it a platforms company rather than a software company. And it's that plus whenever they got into the Surface, the hardware, right? It's right about the same time. It was kind of like the perfect storm of brilliant ideas to just kind of pivot the company, like many IT folks are trying to pivot now. And that's one reason I'm trying to do this podcast, is because I'm kind of pivoting right now, because I've been like you, system administration, Hyper-V, clustering, Active Directory. When I was a PFE at Microsoft, I was a platforms PFE, so any service or feature on Windows, but specialized doing Active Directory health checks when I first start out, and then you kind of move into clustering wherever you feel comfortable. And, I've been doing that for 20 years, and I just see the writing on the wall with automation and things like that, hey, maybe I should start learning like Python, and maybe I should start learning a little bit of data science, and maybe I should start learning, Power Apps and those sorts of things. And I think that's going to be important for IT folks moving forward. I think you're definitely going to always have specialists, right? You're going to have this subject matter experts, but I think it's going to, which just the dynamic DevOps world, someone's going to say, hey, I see this new framework that's open source. It's been around for 3 months. Let's try to do something with that. And there's no real way to prepare for that. You just have to trust that you can figure it out, but you have the tool sets to hopefully build something great off of that.
Yeah, I could not agree more. It's absolutely the case, but it's also fun, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
you are probably the same as I do. It's a lot of fun to learn new things and see what's going on, and especially when you have a job or when you have the interest and you invest the time to learn new things. It will definitely help your career. I mean, that's definitely something which is going to happen if you're open to it, to learn new things, and you also want to try new things. I think it's funny how when I talk to different IT people, I always see different things. Some of them are really protective of their job. Some of them are really looking forward to learn something new. And the protective part of the job is, I always said, if you get the chance in your company to invest, like, I don't know, let's say 4 or 5 weeks on a completely new topic, let's say machine learning, for example, and you can become that machine learning expert in that company, take it, because you're also going to be one of the machine learning experts in your country, right? There are not so many people already like experts in things like machine learning, AI, also cloud platform, than you have, for example, with Active Directory, right? A very old technology where there are many, many good people with a lot of good experience out there, a lot of experts. There it's hard to get to the top, right? But if you start with something new, it basically gets easier to get to the top, because there are not so many people already experts for years in that specific area.
Yeah, definitely. You differentiate yourself, right? There's been people who have been becoming Active Directory experts for 22 years. I think it's been out, something along those lines, when Active Directory came out, and then, but Python, or Django or any of these platforms, or even Power Apps or Power BI or something along those lines. That's just a couple of years. People haven't even been able to get through college since that's come out. There hasn't been people who've made it out of secondary education to even be able to get jobs in that. And I think that's the cool thing. And I just hope people know that I'm going to be really honest here with people. Like whenever I got my job at Microsoft as an Active Directory engineer, basically, so I was hired on, and I think everybody who's ever worked at Microsoft feels this way. But whenever you go in on your first day and you go in the training and you're learning from the people who write whatever program or platform you're supporting, you have the people who actually write the documentation, who actually build and code and those sorts of things. You're learning from those people, and whenever your first day there, you're like a deer in the headlights. You're like, I'm a fraud. They're going to find out. They're going to fire me and all these other things. And it's just, you have to trust that you're going to figure it out. And so we have a saying in America, fake it till you make it, right? You have to, and I think that's adopting those new technologies is literally that. You just have to know all technology, all programming languages are functionally pretty similar, right? So if you know Python, you have to think, man, I can figure out C# or I can figure out, JavaScript or something along those lines, and it's not going to be that difficult. And IT is really not that much difficult. Azure isn't that bit different from AWS or Google Cloud. Fundamentally, they're pretty much the same thing. They just have different tool sets to get it done, and you just have to trust that instinct. And I think a lot of people in the IT world are still stuck in the old business world where they just think, hey, I've got a job. I'm going to work here 20 years. I'm going to retire. I'm going to, 50 years old, and I'm going to, have this perfect little life. And that's just not it anymore. The globalization and I don't know of anybody who's been at their job for 20 years now, so I don't know how it is over there, but that's how it is over here. It's just very competitive. And so I think that I really like that the technology is pushing people to change how they work and then change how they expect to live throughout their career.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, and again, just to say, it's the same here in Europe as well, especially like Switzerland. We are, to be honest, in IT in a very comfortable situation where I know like there are studies which show us, especially in Switzerland, that in the next couple of years, we are missing thousands of engineers just because we don't have enough of them, right? So if you're in IT or if you're looking for a career, IT I think is definitely a way to go.
Yeah, and it's even that way in the United States. And so I've been a hiring manager at my previous positions, and we actually had to hire immigrants and sponsor immigrants to come to the United States because we just not enough people coming into those career paths. And the big thing, and Microsoft has a huge push for this, which is awesome, but women in technology, and that starts with getting girls involved in the STEM studies and things like that early on in the United States. I'm sure that you guys have something similar there, but getting young girls and teen girls and even girls in college and interested in the engineering side. And the beauty of it is I see this. We're both on Twitter and we're both very active on Twitter. I've seen, and it's just cool just to see that it's getting more diverse. The IT departments have been more diverse. For 20 plus years I've been in IT. I've had, the first 10 years of my career, I had maybe 2 women in my department, and I worked at global organizations, and so it's completely different now, and it's really cool because it's good, different perspectives, different ways of doing things and logic and that sort of stuff. And so there's definitely more jobs than there are people to fill them. So I encourage everyone to take kind of what we're talking about here and just kind of go figure it out. You can do it because we've both done. I remember my first certification was actually A+, CompTIA A+ certification, which is a hardware software. And then I took the Windows Vista, and I was like, man, once I took that Windows Vista, I was like, that's not so hard. And then it's kind of like all downhill from there, and you just keep taking them.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's okay. So we've kind of gone down the path about certifications and where we think, technology is kind of going right now. So I guess we can just kind of dive into our little list of agenda items here and see if there's anything else we want to cover. I guess it's a good time to transition to the MVP. So you've said, how many years have you been MVP total?
I think it must be 7 right now.
Wow.
I got my first one in 2012, I think. That's when it's all started.
That's awesome. That takes a lot of dedication, to be involved in the community for that long. That's really impressive. That's fantastic. Again, I think it's one of those things. How, can we just discuss from an MVP perspective, how did your life change? Like when you got your first MVP, does it stay the same and you're just kind of, hey, I've got this badge of honor, or, can you just discuss that?
No. Yeah, no. So for me, it was super excited. I remember how it worked back then. It was like quarterly. You got these emails, and how the whole thing works is someone needs to nominate you as MVP. Back then, everyone could do that. You could also nominate yourself. Today, a couple of months ago, they changed it to a Microsoft employee or another Microsoft MVP has to nominate you. And then I had I know one MVP from Germany who was nominating me for my blogging and for my social media and things like being active in the community. And then I got a email from Microsoft saying that here's an Excel list. Fill in all your contributions. And you start to fill in and you try to like, okay, look, I did this, I did that. And to be honest, the list wasn't that big at this time. It was still good, but then I send that Excel file, and then you don't hear anything for months. Then what happens is at the first like of every quarter, well, at least back then, it was the first of every quarter. I think now it's even monthly. They nominate the new MVPs. So you get an email. For us, that's around in Europe, it's around 4 p.m. That must be like early morning in the US. They send out the emails to all the people who made it. And I remember I was at the customer and I got this email and I was super excited because for us, this was like a very important part being of the community and getting access to Microsoft and getting but it's also a big honor, right? To get
Totally,
this
yeah.
get awarded for your contributions you did basically in the community.
Yeah, so you're getting that recognition for all the hard work you put in, but and the great thing is someone else noticed it, right? And that it's I think we're all kind of fine with just being part of the community and seeing that sort of thing, but getting that gratification is very awesome. That's really cool. I've never gotten it, but it's mainly just because I haven't you have to be dedicated for like 12 months at a time, and I've just never so I just applaud anyone who's gotten it, because I can only imagine how much work and how many people you help. That's the way I think of it. So like everybody who's gotten an MVP award, don't think about them. Think about every person that they've helped over that year. I just think how many people read their blog post, or how many people that they helped on the support forums, or how many people that they've assisted on Twitter and these things like that. And it can start really quickly, right? Like your one little help can like just. I still get like pings on my blogs from articles I wrote 15 years ago, So
Yeah.
you never know how long, and you could save someone's day. They can be having the worst day of their life because something happened at the office and they don't know how to fix it. And then boom, they just found you through a being. Just keep that in mind that it is we're all kind of a community. So that geek badge of honor for that MVP is a really cool thing.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. And especially, I think it comes to you, as you said, it needs a lot of consistent work and dedication. For me, it was not, when I started my blog, which was basically one of the main contributions I do. Well, today is also a lot of speaking and other engagements. But the blog was definitely the main thing. But it was never intended to become an MVP when I started the blog, right? I mean, it's the same for a lot of other people. They just do things because they think it's a good idea. They want to give back something to the community. For me, the reasons why I started a blog were kind of like I use it as a notebook, and if someone else, I can help someone else with my notes, with my how things work. That's great, right? And so that's basically how it started. For a lot of people who ask me, how do you get an MVP? I think really important to know that it's not just something you can just invest like 3 months in it and you start blogging and you write like 5 blogs a week. And then after 3 months, you just like don't have that consistency anymore. You don't have that dedication anymore. It really is, you need to do it over a little bit of time, right? And then after a while, it will definitely happen. to you. If you do great work, you will get awarded. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah, and people know each other now, right? On the Twitters makes things so small because if you do the hashtags for whatever technology you're a part of, you learn very quickly who the thought leaders are with those technologies. You learn who the program managers within Microsoft who own that technology. And so if you want to get involved, Twitter is fantastic. Like literally just do the hashtag for whatever product you're doing, and you're going to find the most important people, including the MVPs for that product, and then just emulate kind of what they're doing. And don't expect it. I think that's the thing is if you go into trying to expect to win an MVP award, don't do that. I mean, to me, that's the wrong mindset to get in with. Like you should be doing it kind of like you did. We're like, hey, I've got this great notebook of all of this information it has to help someone else. And I've done that in the past as well. That's one of the things I'm doing with my website is I'm taking my 10 years of OneNote and like sharing it with the world, and someone's gonna, I know, figure that, love that. And it's just, it is one of those things you just have to want to help other people. And that's what technology is all about, right? And Microsoft's current slogan, is empower. And so you're just like Microsoft empowers you to succeed, hopefully you want to empower your fellow colleague.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, to be honest, a perfect example for the Twitter thing is like we would never have met, I think, without Twitter. I think I would not be on that podcast if it's not for Twitter, right?
Yeah, not at all. And it's one of those things where I've met I'm a like huge Twitter user. I've been on it since like the first couple months, but people just don't realize the power of Twitter. And from a perspective, even thing like if you get bad customer service at a company, go do a hashtag and say, I got bad customer service here. Most of the time, someone's going to contact you really quickly about that. Nobody wants to trend for the wrong reasons, and that includes Microsoft. I'm not going to say go blast Microsoft whenever something happens wrong, but it's not hard. To me, if you have an issue with a Microsoft product and you don't go to Twitter, then you're not I've actually jobs where I was working in an investment bank, they blocked Twitter, and I actually went and got a waiver from the security team to get access to Twitter, because all I did was went and printed out like 4 or 5 tweets where literally I sent like a tweet to Marko Zinovich or something like that, and like a technical fellow at Microsoft responds to me in a couple minutes. What other platform can that happen? And they do it if they have the time, great, they do it. Jeffrey Snover, the father of PowerShell, I don't know how many times he's helped me, like especially back in the day whenever PowerShell was still rather new. And so and that's just everyone from the PMs all the way up to the technical fellows. And so utilize Twitter, get involved with Twitter if you're really interested in learning more about Microsoft as well, because you're going to find out really quickly the people to follow.
And I have to add something for that. I mean, that's like exactly what you said. Microsoft people, they're also on Twitter, and they're not just helping, they're also listening. They are listening a lot. As you also mentioned with the Windows Insider program, for example, they take feedback very seriously. It's not like, I remember when I started as an IT apprentice and worked for that small shop, and we did Active Directory Exchange and things like that. And when there was a bug or something was not working, I thought, yeah, okay, that's just how the way it is. We cannot change it. But that is completely wrong, right? Everyone can basically tell about their issues, tell about the blockers they have, what things are working, what things are not working. And Microsoft is listening very, very carefully and very closely to this and tries to improve the products and the services.
Yeah, and you have to think that the products, like I know whenever I was within Microsoft, you're very proud of your work there because, again, you're surrounded by brilliant people. Most IT people, they think most of the time at their jobs, they're probably like, I'm like one of the smartest people in this building. Let's just be honest. We're all kind of a little cocky. You have to have a little bit of that in you to be able to trust yourself in like the heat of the moment whenever trying to save a $250,000 system or something like that. You have to have a little bit of arrogance. And I'm not saying everybody's really, really arrogant, but that was the first place, like literally I was like, man, I'm an idiot. Like whenever I walked into the Microsoft campus in Las Colinas, which is just right outside of Dallas, Texas, like I'm an idiot, man. And it's this the most humbling experience. And you can either freak out and like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Or you can just let the knowledge faucet come. And the first 6 months you're there, it's like the craziest experience in the world because it's like Matrix. It's just codes flowing at you. And you just embrace it and just know that you can. My biggest thing I tell people is just trust you can do it. Like I can whenever I was hiring people was like, I can teach someone a technology, but I can't teach someone how to interact with people and then how to like believe in themselves that they can troubleshoot. And I mean, that's 90% of technology is literally, my whole career is nearly like, oh, someone's asked me, my father told me when I was a kid, like, if anybody ever asks you if you know how to do something, just say, yeah, I know how to do it. Because someone's written a book on how to do it. And it's like, now someone has like an entire course from like MIT that you can go watch on YouTube. You know what I mean? So there's really no excuses.
No, I agree. I mean, it's always good to learn, and just be sure that you want to learn, and that you're not afraid of like doing something new. There are different things where sometimes it's good to tell like to go forward with that. Who, like, if someone asks you in the company who wants to do this, and it's a new technology, and you think that this is a cool thing, there is no reason not to do it. I mean, some companies, they maybe have reasons, but it's always great. I love when I see we have some very young people in the company. I love them, like, to see how they can engage with technology, right? And how they go with full energy. If there is something new, you give it to them and they learn it, right? And it's amazing.
Yeah, and you can tell pretty quickly who's going to catch on and who's not whenever it comes to the the entry level people. And usually it's the people that are just afraid to come out of their shell, and so hopefully you can guide those folks along. But the biggest thing is, don't be afraid. At the end of the day, pretty much everything's recoverable now. Don't go doing anything crazy. But man, if I had $1 for every time, I thought I was going to ruin something, and then I'm like, oh, screw it, I'm hitting delete anyways. And then like, oh, and I had backups. It wasn't that big of a deal. So just trust that if you do your due diligence and you do your, you do your process, and procedures, and make sure you have backups and rollback plans and those sorts of things. Like, just trust that everything. You got this, you've got this. And so, and everybody know who's super successful in IT. That's the attitude they have. They like, look, I know this. And, it's not an air of cockiness or air of arrogance. It's just like, you just have to believe in what you're doing. Otherwise you're probably going to don't believe it. So
Absolutely.
So that kind of gets me, speaking of, you discussed something that you've done a lot of, and I've looked, I think it's like 10 years of it, but speaking engagements, that's something that would freak out a lot of people. So how did you get involved with becoming a speaker, a technology speaker? It
was around the same time as I got an MVP and started my new job. The company back then was, I think we were 7. I was employee number 7. Now we are, by the way, over like 80 people right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it grew a little bit. So, however, we were 7 people, and you can imagine that there is not a big budget for marketing available, right? So how we did it back then was just like my bosses and all the people in the company and the founders, we used the chances to speak at Microsoft events, or just also community events, right? About the Microsoft technology. So we shared basically our knowledge, and that was basically the chance to win new customers, to tell, hey, those guys basically in front there, those are the experts. So let's ask them, and let's like go with them, and let's get some consulting hours with them. And so I got involved. I started a job at this new company. Like after half a year, there was this event that they said, hey, do you want to do a session about the stuff you do? Like back then, I think it was Windows Server, Hyper-V, and storage. And I said, yeah, of course, why not? And I can remember I was super nervous. The night before already, like we prepared and did everything, and it went well, I think, back then. Obviously, I would not be happy if I do the session today, but back then, I think at the end it was happy. And I kind of like, it was a lot of pain and a lot of, took a little bit of courage to start with.
Oh, for
sure,
yeah.
But at the end, when I've done it and I got some good feedback, it felt really, really good. So I thought, okay, I want to do this more. And I started just to do it more and more and more. And I try to improve as much as I can, right? I try to learn what is good about my sessions, what is not that good, what is, how do others do sessions, what is important for the people listening, how do the people listen to me, or do they not? And then I just practiced. Well, with practice, I mean, I just got from event to event to event to speak. And I think that's just the thing. You really want to do it, but you also need to have the chance to practice it, right?
Right.
And I started with very small events, user groups, events, and things like that, where it's not that bad. And to be honest, if you are in a room with a lot of people and you're the person presenting, usually everyone already knows how difficult presenting is. And the other thing is that he thinks you are the experts on this topic. You are a little bit there's no one really want to be against you, right? If you do a mistake on stage, that's absolutely fine. There is no, if you don't know something on stage, that's absolutely fine. So that's what I had to realize. You can do mistakes on stage. You can like not know things. That's absolutely fine. As long as you're honest, if you are an expert in that topic, you will be fine.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing to tell people is, whenever you get up there and you're terrified, I still feel that now, not to the level I did originally, but to me it's like a star football player, or a star athlete who goes out. They're 20 years in their career, they still get butterflies before the game. You still get that because everybody's looking at you, and you don't want to let anybody down. There's a stress level with that, but just enjoy it. And like you said, everybody makes mistakes, and that's a great thing that I've never really said before. Is like most of the people at these conferences have seen and or been speakers themselves, so they know how hard it is. So they're not going to judge you. If anything, you're just going to give them a good laugh at happy hour, and then they'll forget about it the next day, or they'll remember it and say, "You remember that one time? That was a very memorable conference." And to me, it's like, hey, at the end of the day, you're still breathing. There's people who have like actual problems in this world. You'll be okay. And just it's one of those things. But if you ever think that that's just going to go away, and you're just going to be able to go up there and nail it and not get a little butterflies, I mean, I don't think very many people are that. I think everybody gets a little bit nervous.
Absolutely. I mean, I cannot remember how many presentations I did in the last couple of years, but if I go on stage, I still get some butterflies. It's funny, it also depends a little bit. I haven't figured out when it is more, and sometimes it's less, and sometimes it's more. I have not figured out what it is. I realize that if more people are in the room, I'm doing even better. I feel better. If there is a smaller group of people. But to be honest, I haven't figured out what it is, but I start to really like that feeling, that that little stress before the presentation, and then you start doing the presentation, and while you're doing it, while you get the intro done, you start to feel good about it, right? And especially at the end, when you have done the presentation, when you're done, you feel extremely satisfied, I think. So that's what I like. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like the same feeling we probably all get where we're working on a really hard problem, right? And whenever we finally solve that problem, that like the elation we feel, of course it's stressful the whole time if you especially have like your boss looking over your shoulder and saying, "Why is it down? We're losing thousands of dollars," or something like that. But I think we all kind of get into IT, or most of us probably get into IT because we kind of like that living on the edge and feeling a little stressed out at times because it pushes us to be better. And so I think you get a little bit of that with the speaking as well. So that's just really awesome. I didn't even think about doing like a local, I've been when I was a PFE, like I would be in executive boardrooms with CEOs and CTOs of big companies. And so I've gotten pretty comfortable speaking in front of people. In front of big crowds, I'll still get a few butterflies in the stomach, but I would definitely like to get out in front of people more. And so I think I'm going to start doing that, looking at the local user groups here. I've gone to we have a Skype for Business user group that the Microsoft office here has. I've only gone 3 or 4 times. I probably should start going to that more. And so I'll do something like that. Sounds really cool. Awesome. So, I think we've kind of given a good rundown of everything. Is there anything that you wanted to discuss or regarding Microsoft that you wanted to share with people? I've got a couple questions for you if not.
No, I think we covered a lot of amazing things. I think we could talk for hours if we needed to.
We certainly can. Yeah, we certainly can. With this, we'll definitely try to have you back. This is awesome. Great.
There's definitely enough content and topics to talk about. No, well, we talked a lot about learning today. I think that's really important, and that people take their chances, as we said, to learn new stuff. The only thing I want to highlight again is the Microsoft Learn platform, which I think is amazing. So check it out, microsoft.com/learn, I think, which has different trainings and hands-on labs for free, really good guides, hands-on guides with actual Azure technology. You won't need to have any credits or any Azure subscription. The only thing you will need is a Microsoft account to log in, and then you basically get a free sandbox to deploy the stuff from that course, and then you can try it out. So that's the only thing I want to add today. It was a really pleasure with you, Brad.
Awesome.
It was fun talking about that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. So I got a couple more things for you before then I'll let you go. I also want to bring up that for folks like you said, the Learn platform is free. There's no cost. There's no reason. To me, if there's a Microsoft technology you want to learn, Microsoft has a learning training series video on that somewhere, whether it's Channel 9, whether it's the Microsoft Learn platform. If you hit up Twitter and you find the people on Twitter and say, hey, where can I learn about this technology? They have free training somewhere. And I also want to mention that Microsoft Virtual Academy, which has been that site for a while, is being replaced by the Learn platform. And I was told that they're shutting it down at the end of this month. So if you have any courses left on Microsoft Virtual Academy before the end of the month, make sure you get those done. But at the end of January, I believe that it's going away. Some of those videos are hosted on Channel 9, but some of them are hosted on Microsoft Virtual Academy as well. So you won't have access to those courses if you don't finish them, or you may want to grab one of like the scripts they use for Ignite that you can go download whatever videos you want from the site. So that's all I wanted to bring that up. Okay, so I just have a couple of small little fun closing questions before we head out. What is your favorite Microsoft tech? If you had one piece of Microsoft technology or hardware that your entire career, what is your favorite? That's I know it's a tough question.
Yeah, there's so many things I like, but I think I would go with well, obviously Azure, but if I need to take like something really personal, I think I would definitely go with my Surface Book 2. I think that's my daily driver that I use. I like the hardware, I like the design, I like the power of it. That would be that. If it would be some like a little bit of a bigger thing, I would take Azure.
The Swiss Army knife, right? You're like, I'll take the Swiss Army knife. But the Surface Book 2, I think, is the best piece of hardware they've ever made. Although I do want a Surface Studio really, 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 really bad. But I've got to convince myself, don't go spend every time I go in the Microsoft store, it's like, you don't need it, because I'm not an artist, right? So if I was an artist, I'd have that in a heartbeat. But okay, awesome. And so one more question, just to kind of give people a little food for thought here. What do you think is going to be the most important innovation of Microsoft within the next like 12 to 24?
Oh wow,
I like putting you on it. I'm like, we're gonna have a revisit in like 2 years. I'm like, remember when you said this? No, I'm just kidding.
So I to be honest, I think I cannot like name something. I would love to name something specifically, like that will be the solution. But I think that the whole investment Microsoft is doing in AI will pay off. So I think that whatever we see there, I mean, we already have a lot of technologies like facial recognition stuff, like machine learning, for example, Skype translator and things like that. Those are all such amazing technologies. And I think we will see more of that. To be honest, it's too hard to tell to figure out, okay, that's the next big thing. But something in that area which really makes people's lives easier. Think about like Skype. You can now talk to a person from China without knowing their language, and Skype does automatically translate it and back and forth, right? And that's amazing. And I think that things like this, which are really have an impact on people, something like that will be the biggest technology definitely Microsoft will release in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm not sure if you heard, but the podcast I released yesterday was literally all on AI and machine learning and how we have to adapt or we're going to die. But Microsoft is going to help us because they're putting AI into everything and they're giving us the tool sets with Azure, to get that done. So that's awesome that you said that, because that fit right into what I said yesterday. And I'm just going to throw something out there, just because I was talking to some educators on Twitter tonight, and I'm going to have some people lined up for an interview from that. But the things that Microsoft is doing in the classroom, and I don't mean the college classroom, I mean in the primary school classroom. They're using Microsoft Teams, they're using Skype, they're using Minecraft, they're using just so many cool tool sets within the classroom to get kids engaged and get kids involved with not just kids within. Kids are now they're working in global organizations, sitting in their classroom because they're working with and doing projects with people across the world. And it's just fascinating that Microsoft, the Microsoft EDU program, the OneNote, the things that Team News are doing with the OneNote it's just amazing. So if you haven't read about that, guys, I'm gonna have an interview with some folks from the Microsoft education team within the next week or two. Hopefully, we exchange emails today. We're gonna get that on there. So that's where I'm gonna say for the next couple of years, just because that's our future, right? They're gonna save us from all of our mistakes, is the way. So. Okay, thanks again so much. Thomas Maurer. Twitter.com/ThomasMaurer. And then his name is thomasmaurer.ch is his website. Check him out. Follow him on Twitter. Great resource. He's like that. Like I just saw what he was tweeting about, and I was like, hey, I'm just gonna reach out to this guy. This looks really cool. And so, as you can see, hopefully from this now nearly 50-minute podcast interview, that he just has a lot, and he's very passionate in sharing, and he just wants to share. So if you have any questions, I'm sure he'll answer. And then, do you have anything you want to say to them?
Yeah, well, thank you, and hope I see you on Twitter or on my blog. I always appreciate comments and likes and discussions. I can always learn from people. So yeah, just approach me. That's a good thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Thomas, for the interview. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Brett.
Finally, Microsoft fans, I'm here to call you to action. For too long, we've been inundated and attacked with misinformed, misguided, and ignorant news and coverage about Microsoft. Well, to that, I say no more. With your help, we can defeat the ignorant and lift up the technologically oppressed by spreading the word about Microsoft, their products, and their people the right way. So I challenge you today to stand up for the technologically oppressed and help spread the word about Microsoft today. Subscribe to this podcast and share it with your family, friends, and colleagues. Write a 5-star review on iTunes, support it on Patreon, and follow Microsoft Today on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I can't do this alone, but with your help and God willing, we can come together to defeat the tyranny of misinformation. Until next time, Microsoft fans, good luck on the battlefield in your fight against ignorance, and Godspeed.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.